On this short video, I'm going to talk about the name that Yosef was given, Tzafnat Paneach. That a lot of times people heard that this means revealer of secrets. So I want to say a few words about what this name may have meant, and in particular what language is it in. And also we'll talk about the books, the Jewish books that are called Tzafnat Paneach. A very common name of all kinds of different Sfarim, different Jewish books, written by various authors on all kinds of topics. So, of course, the fact that Yosef was given a special name, that's not a big surprise. We find it in other places also, that a person who becomes important, who is given a special position, he is given a special name. So, when Yosef became second in the Egyptian kingdom, Pharaoh gave him name Tzafnat Paneach. The question is, first of all, what language is this in? One possibility is that it's something in Egyptian, or at least it may be using Hebrew letters to transliterate something close to an Egyptian name. There's a distinct possibility that a lot of the names and expressions used, in particular in Yosef's story and other places in the Torah, and of course in the later books, it was similarly Babylonian names that Daniel and others were given. So there's a distinct possibility these are Egyptian names, or at least the Hebrew equivalent of Egyptian names. Of course, we realize that in every language there are specific peculiarities of the spellings, and therefore the spelling of the name in the Hebrew may not be exactly the same as the transliteration. One known example is the king of Persia, during whose reign the story of Purim happened. His name in the Megillat Esther, of course, is Ashashveirosh. So today the scholars are pretty sure that we're talking about a specific king whose name in Persian was pronounced as something like Hayar Arsha. So very different from Ashashveirosh. But the consonants are almost the same. It's really the vowels that differ. So one simple explanation is that in Hebrew, we don't usually have just consonants in a row. In most languages, you could have a few consonants in a row, but not in Hebrew. So every consonant has to have vowels in between. And so the aleph is added, Ashashveirosh, so that it doesn't sound like too many consonants. So this explains why aleph is added. The rest, of course, has to do with vowel pronunciation and is a separate topic. So if Tzafnat Paneach may have meant something in Egyptian, by the way, Rav Aryeh Kaplan in the Living Torah tries to give a few possibilities what it may have meant in ancient Egyptian. There are at least some possibilities, and today scholars are still debating this, that the transliteration is not exact. Some of the letters are used specifically that sound better in Hebrew in this particular order, and therefore there's a lot of wiggle room what exactly this name sounded in Egyptian. But the standard understanding is that this name is a Hebrew name. It could be that Pharaoh was interested in knowing that Yosef comes from the land of the Hebrews. According to Ramban, by the way, the land of Canaanites, everybody spoke Hebrew there. So it wasn't the language of just the family of Yaakov or some specific group. It was the language of Canaanites. And so to Ibn Ezra holds that way. I discussed it in a different lesson. So it could very well be that Pharaoh wanted to name Yosef according to the language of the land from which Yosef came, and may have found out what that means and asked him, and he was given the name Revealer of Secrets, because of course he interpreted the dream of Pharaoh. And there is also a third possibility that is both in a certain sense. Just like with the name of Moshe and many other names, it could mean that the name means something in Egyptian, or at least close to that name, but also the Torah gives it a kind of Hebrew spin as well. So the reader of the Torah, who of course normally doesn't know ancient Egyptian, will also make some sense out of that name. Whatever the case may be, this became a very common expression, Tzafnat Paneach. So Tzafun is something that's hidden, and Paneach became the word to decipher something, to reveal something. For instance, when somebody understands the ancient script, ancient Egyptian was only revealed how to understand it relatively recently, less than I think 200 years ago. There was this Rosetta Stone, which had ancient Egyptian and later Egyptian and Greek language written. So since it's the same text, the knowledge of Greek helped understand the ancient Egyptian, together with the fact that some ancient Egyptians, their descendants, still have a somewhat similar language. Copts, there's this group, Coptic language, a group of Christians in Egypt that apparently descended from the ancient Egyptians. Most Egyptians, of course, are Arab Muslims, but there are some people who come from the ancient Egyptian, and their language is not so different. So there's enough, at least, similarities, together with the Rosetta Stone, that gave some scholar in France, I think, enough information to be able to understand that. So this is called Pinuach. Paneach, right? Pinuach is the word in Hebrew that's used for this kind of thing, the understanding of something that some script, some cryptic thing. So what's interesting is a lot of different rabbis decided to name their books the same way. All kinds of books on all kinds of topics, completely unrelated to each other. Tzafnat Paneach. By the way, some of these rabbis also, their name was Yosef, which gave an additional reason to name the book like that. I think the most well-known, it's arguable which book is more well-known, but the most well-known, in my opinion, collection of books that's called Tzafnat Paneach is Rabbi Yosef Razin. In case you've never heard about him, he lived in Dvinsk. That's a Polish name for Daugavpils now in Latvia. Latvia used to be part of Poland then, and between the two world wars. So he died before World War II. And his name was Rabbi Yosef Razin, or Rozin. So Raz in Hebrew is a secret. So it makes double sense to name the book Tzafnat Paneach, since his name was kind of Razin or Rozin, right? Like includes the word secret. And that's his last name, and his first name was Yosef. And his books are all called Tzafnat Paneach. He was a big fan of Rambam, and most of his books either are commentaries to Rambam or deal with Rambam's shittas. There's a lot of tshuvot also, a lot of responsa he wrote. People wrote to him all over the world, and he was considered one of the greatest geniuses for many generations. People used to make a special brocha on him, that Hashem gave the wisdom to his people, to those who fear him. There's a special brocha on great sages of Torah, but we haven't been making this brocha for a while because we don't know what level of knowledge of Torah is needed, but he was probably one of the last people whom many made this brocha. I think today some people make this brocha also on contemporary scholars who are great scholars of Torah. At any rate, he was a very knowledgeable person, of course, and he knew Kabbalah. He was a Hasid also. His approach actually is very unusual and non-standard. And in halachic writings, he's not quoted as much because of his approach. For him, Rambam's, Maimonides' opinion is usually the most important. He's not so much into quoting Shulchan Aruch or the commentaries of Shulchan Aruch. So therefore, in standard halakha, he's rarely quoted. At any rate, that's one book, Tzafnat Paneach. Then there was a commentary to Ibn Ezra called Tzafnat Paneach. It's a super commentary. Ibn Ezra wrote commentary on the Torah, and this is a commentary to the commentary. Then there is Tzafnat Paneach, a commentary on the Torah. It's only part of it that survived. It's very rationalistic. He interprets some person with last name Ashkenazi. So he interprets a lot of the miracles of the Torah in the most rationalistic manner. He was probably the example of the most extreme approach of the rationalistic school of thought. Rambam and Ralbag also belonged to that school, but he was the most... a lot of modern Orthodox Jews like his commentary to the Torah. And there are plenty of other books also called Tzafnat Paneach. So just for the record, this became a very common expression. A lot of people, when they choose the name of the book, they use a name that has their name in it. Like a person whose name is Avraham might call his book Magen Avraham, for instance. But Tzafnat Paneach doesn't really have the name of a person, and not everybody who wrote books called Tzafnat Paneach are called Yosef, named Yosef, but at the very least they're all trying to reveal some kind of new Hidushim, and that's why they call their books that way, Revealer of Secrets. And on this I'll end. If you like my video, please press like and please subscribe to our channel.